Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. The decent weather continues. Anyone that's going to plant work today for the final day, in for a bit of a treat. Speaking of which, the final day of plant works, you wait years for it to come around, and then lo and behold, it's over in an instant. But if you are on your way to plant works, or if you're already there, have a fantastic time. Enjoy yourselves. Um, Slightly different makeup to the show today. It was well, the Construction Index yesterday announced the top 100 companies, construction companies by turnover, and we're going to be taking a closer look at that. So we've decided to blow out the question of the day. We're going to blow out the minute to win it as well to make room for that. Also need to make a few apologies. I know that Andy Thornton was here, but he's had to leave. He's been invited to a meeting, which he can't avoid, so he's gone. I think Ken Hatter is probably on the ground at Plantworks at the moment, so he won't be here either. So we'll probably be a little bit quieter, but thankfully, keeping up the numbers and keeping up appearances. Mark Whiting has just joined us as well. Let me run quickly through the chat. Good morning to you, Mark. Good morning to Jim Turner, who is here, present and correct. Andy Darvell is here as well. Morning, morning, morning. And somewhere here is, where is he? He's here somewhere. Dan Khan saying, sorry, I'm a little bit late this morning at 9:31. 29 minutes before the show was due to start. But good morning, everyone. As I say, lots and lots to get through this morning. So let me roll the intro and get this show properly on the road, shall we? Like this. Yeah, I've got a slightly different layout, so I need to be aware of my position with the camera. Normally full screen, and I'm on a vertical one right now. I'll tell you what, let me take that away just for a moment. Let me go back to this because I want to tell you what's on the show today. First of all, it is Thursday, the 25th of September. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. And in today's show, we're going to be counting down the UK's 100 biggest construction firms. We're going to be taking a closer look at the all-new Komatsu PC220LCi-12. We're taking a walk around the LiuGong 835T wheel loader, and Miller UK has extended its warranty to a full 5 years. So we've sent Demi Lition to report. Plus, in our morning monologue today, that's morning monologue when my tongue isn't too big for my mouth. Are we in a trust recession? Yeah. I've already said this, but I'm going to say it again. There is no question of the day today. And just for today, we're going to forego the minute to win it competition as well, because I want to spend some time discussing the newly published countdown of the top 100 construction companies. And we will be right back with that after this. Just while that's all pulling itself together, I do want to say good morning to Neil Bruce, who's joined us again all the way from New Zealand. Dan Cullen is back. He was here. He was gone. He's back. Good morning, Dan. Chris Ford has just pitched up as well. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for your company. So, yes, yesterday afternoon, Construction Index published its countdown of the top 100 UK construction companies by turnover. And it really does make for absolutely fascinating reading. I'm going to put it on my screen so I can see it very, very clearly. In the reporting period, well, I tell you what, I know you're going to struggle to see this, so I'm going to go through it, but I will give you the link for it. In fact, while I'm talking, let me do that for you now. That's not the way. Right, if you want to look at this a little more closely yourself, you can. There's a link in the chat right now. As I say, hard to see, so let me give you some of the highlights. In the reporting period to December 2024, Balfour Beatty's turnover was £8.2 billion, making it the biggest company in the sector by an absolute country mile. In fact, it's nearly twice the size of Morgan Sindall, which came in second with a turnover of £4.5 billion. Interestingly, though, Balfour Beatty saw its profit margin drop from 3.1% last year to 2.6% this year, Meanwhile, Morgan Sindall went in the opposite direction, with its profit margin rising from 3.5% last year to 3.8% this year. Kia Group came in third with a turnover of just shy of £4 billion, while Lang O'Rourke and Mace took the fourth and fifth spots with roughly £2.3 billion each. But what I found most telling in amongst all of this was the relatively narrow margins. The relatively narrow margins that some of these companies are operating on. Kia Group, for example, is operating on a profit margin of just 1.7%. And that's actually slightly up on the 1.5% from the previous reporting period. That's a slim old profit margin, but it's pretty much typical. In fact, you have to go all the way down to the number 9 position, which is Tarmac Trading, to see a more healthy profit margin. Tarmac's latest margin was 8.4%, up from the 6.3% in the year before. You have to go all the way down to the number 48 slot to find a company with a double-digit profit margin. That company is FP McCann. In all, there's only about half a dozen companies enjoying double-digit profits. Equally concerning, and particularly when you get down to the second half, what you're looking at on the screen there is the top 50. You go down to the second half of the bottom 50. There's an awful lot of red there, isn't there? Awful lot of red. A lot of companies have seen both turnover and profit heading in the wrong direction. Excuse me. Go down to number 58. Where's number 58? There it is. Bouygues UK, the UK end of the French company Bouygues. Their turnover is down by 14% year on year, and their profit margin has slipped from a negative 11% to a negative 19.1%. That's big numbers, people. It really is very, very big numbers. There was a couple of other highlights I spotted here. At number 30 is Keltbray, which once again proves that Keltbray is more than just a demolition company these days. What have we got from Keltbray? Their turnover, when I can find it, their turnover was £689 million, up from 527. Their profit is down, however. I'm just doing the maths here. And their previous profit margin was 0.6%. It's down to minus 0.2% now. Yeah, not good at all. Not good at all. And you have to go all the way down. I'm just trying to spot them. I probably should have put a tick against them or something. Yeah, in 76th position is another demolition company, which is Erith Holdings, which is looking positive, actually. 255 million in turnover, up on 227 million the last time around. And its profit margin has gone up from 2.3 to 3.3%. Yeah. Let me take that off the screen. Let me put me back up at full resolution. So the question is, what do they do with their profits? Well, I just have to wonder with this. I know it's a fairly pointed question, but if you're Balfour Beatty, imagine the work, imagine the amount of people, the amount of work, the amount of administration that goes into running a company that's generating £8.234 billion in turnover. And when all is said and done, excuse me, when all is said and done, your profit is 214 million. Now, don't get me wrong. If somebody turned up on my doorstep now, it's unlikely, but if they did and said, here is 214 million pounds, I'd be quite pleased. I really would be quite pleased. But imagine the sheer volume of work, the sheer volume of employees, the sheer volume of heartache and headache and logistics that goes into generating 8.234 billion, and all you've got to show for it at the end of the day is 214 million pounds. Doesn't seem like much of a return, does it? 2.6%. Not. If they're making huge profits, why don't they add to workers' bonus? Because that's one of the ways that they make their profits, is keeping the money amongst themselves. You know, and I mean, even when you look at this, obviously this is done by turnover. If you go down to number 8, which is Vinci, Vinci Construction Holdings. If you remember rightly, Vinci was I think, the company that put out a bit of a begging bowl, wanted discounts from all of their suppliers and so on, not so long ago. Their previous turnover last year was 1.655 billion. They're up to 2.125 billion this year, but their latest pre-tax profits down to negative 6.4. Now, admittedly, that's an improvement on the previous year, which was 14.3% negative, but not. Oh, no, 14.3. That's their turnover and their profit margin, rather. Their previous profit margin was 0.9% negative, and it's up to 0.3% negative. Not. It seems like a lot of work for not a lot of return, doesn't it? Jim Turner says they do pay bonuses to the shareholders. They're the ones that take the risk. True enough. True enough. Shareholders, stakeholders, the CEO, the financial director, I'm sure they are all doing quite nicely. I wonder how that is reflected, and I don't actually have this information in front of me, but are the people like Balfour Beatty sitting there thinking, I'm due a big bonus this year because we've taken our turnover up from 7.9 billion to 8.2 billion? Or are they sat there thinking, yeah, I may not be getting much of a bonus after all because our profit margin is down to 2.6%? And if you're at Lang O'Rourke, where your margin is in the negative, do you get a bonus? You probably still do, truth be told, but makes for fascinating reading. As I say, I will just post that again. If you'd like to see the full top 100, it's over on Construction Index. The link is in the chat. It does make for really, really interesting reading. I mean, things like BAM don't make the top 10. Wilmot Dixon don't make the top 10. McLaren do not make the top 10. There's some big names that are down a ways. They really are down a ways. I've already mentioned Bouygues. As I say, go and take a look yourself. It does make for really interesting reading. It's available on the Construction Index website. It is time to press on with a bit of Caterpillar, and then we're going Komatsu. Yeah, we'll get to Komatsu in just a moment because we've had a couple of bits in from the chat here. Andy Dalvell says, the wastage you see on these big sites is astronomical, so no wonder their profits are not brilliant. It seems the smaller sites you go on, the less wastage they're in. I would agree with that 100%. And I wonder if that's a reflection of being closer to the coalface. If you've got a managing director of a relatively small company that is going from site to site to site and is keeping their finger on the pulse, does that tighten things up and make you a little more aware of waste and inefficiencies? When you get to the size of a Balfour Beatty, does inefficiency creep in? My guess is it probably does. Jim Turner, on a similar vein, says an employee doesn't take a risk. They can only be stopped a maximum of a week's or a month's wages. Well, legally, you're right. Legally, you're 100% right. But morally, you do take a risk in the fact that you are putting your faith in your employer, not just to get paid, but to be, their duty of care to you. That would be one thing. But also the fact that they are operating the company for which you work in a sustainable and profitable way. That means that you will you'll potentially have a job for the long term. I wonder if there are any employees of this, of some of the major companies, Bouygues being one. I wonder if any of their employees are looking at that going, do you know what? Might be worth a phone call to Balfour Beatty. Might be worth having a word with a few agencies just to put the feelers out. Because I'm not saying Bouygues is going anywhere soon, because they are just the UK offshoot of a much, much bigger organisation. But we've seen Carillion go down, and we've seen ISG go down. Why not? Incidentally, on the subject of Carillion, can I still access that? Do I have access to that? I had something come through earlier today. I can't find it, but basically saying that the creditors for Carillion are on very, very shaky ground indeed. I'll try and find that while you're watching Komatsu. So let's do that. Jim Turner says, if they don't operate in a fashion that's acceptable, then it's time to flip. Yeah, although you're right, and I agree with that 100%. The only problem with that is I think if you're working for a company at site level, how aware are you of the financial stability, the financial acuity of those above? You know, our I know that construction sites do tend to be a bit of a rumor mill, and I'm sure there is a few whispers of things aren't looking all that clever. But I would imagine that most people will not be privy to that sort of information on a day-to-day basis. So you, like the shareholders, like the readers of Construction Index, like the viewers of this show, may be seeing some of those figures for the first time. Have you been tipped a wink if you're working for a Bouygues or somebody else that's not doing quite so well? I wonder. I do wonder. Anyway, while I'm doing well, I'm going to play you some Komatsu. It's their new PC220LCi-12, which it was one of my favourite machines at Bauma last time around, and this is what it has to offer. While you're watching this, I'm going to try and find that piece about Carillion. Back after this. It's a smart machine. If you get a chance to get behind the levers of one, I would honestly recommend it. Dan Cullen back on all things related to construction companies. But is it not the staff and workers who make the companies? Gratitude goes a long way. It's a good point. It is a very good point. From Balfour Beatty right down to whoever is in 100 position, they're only there because of their workers. They really are. Andy Darvell said cabs looking better on the Komatsu. Not just the cabs, some of the tech that's wound into that thing as well. Absolutely top notch. Jim Turner says it's not our business to be aware of a company's financial state. Business fluctuates. It'll be counterproductive for employees to have that information. It's an interesting one. It is an interesting one, particularly given the fact that the main subject of my morning monologue today is trust. This is one aspect of trust that I hadn't actually included, but it is an interesting aside. You as an employee, do you trust those above you to run the business profitably? Do you trust them to run it sustainably? Do you trust them to run it transparently and honestly and honorably? I guess you kind of do. And that's quite a lot of trust. I mean, one of the things that I want to touch on when I get to doing the morning monologue is the fact that I personally have become less trusting. Back in the day, I'd get a phone call to say, "Can you come and interview Fred Blogs, or can you do a video of this or whatever?" And I'd just say, "Yeah, I'm on my way. I'm throwing the gear in the car now. I'm on my way." Now I'm running credit checks and all sorts. Really am. Neil Bruce says, is it me or did that dig bucket look rather small? I didn't notice. I'll take a look after the show. But I'd be surprised if it was. I would be surprised if it was. Oh, excuse me. Right, let's crack on. We're going from Japan to China next. We're going to have a really good in-depth look at the 835T, the latest wheel loader from LiuGong, immediately after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, I'll get to them in just a moment. But I did say I was going to go and try and find this information on Carillion, and I have done so. It is there. This comes to us this morning from, who does it come from? It comes from Construction Wave. I don't actually know Construction Wave, but according to them, more than 2/3 of Carillion's businesses are unable to pay creditors 7 years after the collapse. Administrators of Carillion, the collapsed UK construction giant, have announced that 60 of its 84 companies are unable to pay unsecured creditors. Of the remaining Carillion firms, 23 are identified as having potential funds to pay suppliers, with creditors who have no claims over specific assets. With creditors who have no claims over specific assets likely to receive only a fraction of their debts as an unsecured dividend. 7 years on, and it's not looking good. Just going back, just to recap for those that you don't know, Carillion collapsed back in January 2018, owing close to £7 billion, with only £29 million in cash sat in the bank. It kind of begs the question of how is that allowed to happen? You know, as a private individual, you know, if I'm overdrawn, my bank basically stops giving me money because I don't have any. Yet when you're a big business, you just keep spending and spending and spending, digging a deeper and deeper hole. Jim Turner says, I expect nothing more than a wage and hours I've agreed to. I expect a week's notice if they finish me. You're more trusting than I would have thought, Jim. You are more trusting than I thought. He says everything else is fluid. It's true. Dan Cullen says, imagine 7 years and they're still making the news. When a £7 billion company goes tits up, it's going to have repercussions, isn't it? It's going to echo through the industry for quite some time. LiuGong with their 835T. 5 minutes of this you've got, so sit back and enjoy.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to walk us around one of the latest LiuGong wheel loader, the 835T. Based upon the success of 835H, inheriting its durability, reliability, and performance, the 835 is more comfortable to operate, easier to service and maintenance, carries more materials with less fuel in each cycle. Today, let's find out the features and the improvements the 835T has to offer. Let's get started. The 835 is powered by Cummins QSB 5.9 engine, a Tier 3 6-liter engine built by Cummins, with electronic controlled fuel injector and engine curve precisely tuned for wheel loader application. The fuel consumption can be reduced by up to 5%. After undergoing more than 30,000 hours of whole machine reliability testing and over 100,000 hours of core component bench testing, it possesses an extremely high product quality that ensures reliable operation for customers. The ZF fully automatic transmission offers smooth gear shift along with 39 km/h in forward speed and 27 in reverse, making your loading cycle faster and more productive. The machine is built with LiuGong heavy-duty axle. It gives you up to 113 kN traction force. The structure of boom section is improved and optimized, with a shortened boom length, nearly 7 tons of breakout force, and 7.6 tons of lifting force, making it easier to handle heavy loads. The standard bucket size is 1.8 cubic meters. According to different materials and different applications, the bucket size selection can be from 1.5 up to 3.2 cubic meters. It is also equipped with new wear-resistant bucket teeth and blades, featuring materials that have improved core hardness and impact toughness. Notably, the wear resistance of the bucket teeth has increased by 2.5 times. As a versatile machine, it can quickly interchange various attachments to meet the needs of multiple applications, providing multifunctional use. The brand new T-Series cab provides a comfortable and easy operating environment. The left door of the cab opens forward, enlarging the entrance and exit passage, with a tilt design that increases the ladder angle from 0 degree to 5 degrees, significantly improving ergonomic comfort. The mica pressurized cabin effectively prevents dust entry and increases the glass area, enhancing the forward visibility by 20%. Optional fob straps cabins are available to ensure the safety of your operator and the jobber. The enlarged cabin space, with comprehensive and large storage compartments, is designed specifically for driver comfort. Space is increased by 20%, legroom by 30%. The standard four-way adjustable steering column and adjustable console allow the operator to adjust the optimal position based on their habits, enhancing driving comfort and operational efficiency. The one-star function is optional, making the start-stop operation easy and quick. The full LCD front instrument panel is high-definition and eye-catching, monitoring over 20 parameters in real time. It provides intuitive and user-friendly displays that significantly enhance the driving experience. The electric proportional control joystick with F-fan arm makes operation easier. With 12 air conditioning vents providing all-around airflow, the system delivers a larger volume of air, improving cooling performance by 30%. The airflow direction can also be adjusted to blow towards the feet. It features external circulation with dual filtration, enhancing air purification by 50%. Open the panel here, you will find a battery disconnect switch and fuse box underneath here. Easy for access and routine daily check. The air conditioner filter is located on the right side of the cabin and can be easily changed from ground. When you're finished with the air conditioner filter, you can go to the hydraulic oil tank here and check the oil level through the gauge here. The diesel refuel cap is underneath the engine hood here. Can be accessed easily from the ground level and easily open and close and lockable. Open the service panel on both sides and you will find the filters, the dipstick and also the water separator, and it's wide open and easy for access. And also you can touch them from ground level. The single layer large gap radiator featuring patented cooling technology operates efficiently in environments up to 40 degrees Celsius. It is resistant to dust accumulation, making it easy and safe to clean. This concludes all the features and benefits of A35T, your new long-term choice. Stay tuned with us and find out more about T-Series rear loader.
Looks very smart to me. I don't know what you make of it. Let me know. Andy Darwell says, just noticed your hat. Very cool. Yeah, I do have several Bobcat hats. None of them within range. I will say this, and I'll say it publicly because I believe this to be the case. I do have lots of gear, like Trevi Benny hat over there. There's a Caterpillar hat over there. Back in the background there, there's another Bobcat hat. Given the choice, there's only a couple of brands that I wear, and it's not because of my love of the brand, although that does go a long way. Bobcat and Caterpillar just make really, really good merch. I mean, this hat it's the dog's doodles. It really is, and it's not even my favourite. I've got a green one up there, absolutely top notch. Now Ken Hatcher has just joined us. I thought Ken was going to be at Plantworks today. Apparently, he's at Cotswold Airport. Now, I'm no great geography expert, but my guess is that's not that close to Plantworks. Are you flying to Plantworks or have you bailed out early? I'd like to know what's going on, but good morning to you nonetheless. Going back to the conversation I'm having with Jim, and I'm going to hold this one in reserve. I'll put it up now, but I want to hold it in reserve because it really does emphasize this morning's morning monologue. It's not trusting, he says, it's just realism. Basically, I expect nothing, trust nothing, and I'm not therefore surprised by anything. Firms, sites, and gaffers can change in a heartbeat, so there's nothing worth relying on. It's a damning indictment, isn't it? Dan Cullen talking about the The optional cabs on the LiuGong, all I would say is that is a global video, Dan. I would imagine there are markets, quite possibly even the native market for LiuGong in China that doesn't necessarily require cabs. I don't think that's going to impact over here, to be honest. Jim says, but I have things I do and don't accept from people, rules, I suppose. When those rules are broken, it becomes unacceptable and things have to change instantly. I voice my concerns and things either change to suit me or I take myself out of the situation. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Andy Darvell says, I'm wearing a cat hat now from when I got the 352 new. Got a rucksack full of goodies a couple of years ago. Nice to hear. Nice to hear. I know Gary Muirhead had a big bunch of stuff arrive from Volvo back when he got his machine. Hopefully, he's got an EC550 coming. Hopefully, he'll get another batch because I think he was quite pleased with that. We've got one more film to play you today, and it features the wonderful, the ever-lovely Demi Lition. She'll be along just after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, the fine folks at Miller UK, you know, Miller Groundbreaking and all of that, they've tweaked the warranty on their attachments. Demi, tell us
Miller
about it.
UK has announced that it is launching an extended warranty scheme, giving its customers the opportunity to extend the warranty of their GT Series couplers to 5 years. The added protection, called Miller Guard, reflects the company's ongoing commitment to quality, reliability, and customer satisfaction. Miller aims to provide its customers with even greater peace of mind and long-term value with their coupler investment. Barry Robison, Group Sales and Commercial Director at Miller, says, "We continually strive to improve our customer offering, and having this 5-year extended warranty option is true testament to the confidence we have in our coupler technology and our dedication to delivering dependable solutions that are operational in all sectors, even in the harshest environments. We understand that reliability is crucial, and minimizing downtime in the field is absolutely imperative. Our customers are also increasingly focused on sustainability, placing greater importance on extending the lifespan of their assets whilst maintaining optimal operational efficiency. Miller Guard will be available to all customers in the UK and Ireland from this month onwards. All details and eligibility criteria can be found on the company's website or by contacting Miller's customer service team."
Thanks, Demi. That was marvellous. Yeah, good luck. Just very quickly, and I've not got the details because it flashed across my Instagram screen the other day. Keith Miller, the main man up at Miller, has just been given some entrepreneurial award after 47 years at the helm of Miller, groundbreaking Miller UK. Congratulations, well deserved. One of life's nice guys. He really is. Keith and Jackie, congratulations to the pair of you. That is a fantastic achievement. That pretty much wraps up things for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and I hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'm going to be talking all things trust-related immediately after this. Are we in a trust recession? A collapse not of buildings, but of faith in people, institutions, promises, the very glue that holds any society or industry together? I would argue that we are. Look around you. News headlines, social media outrage loops, political theatre. For many, the idea that you can believe what politicians say, that they speak the truth, keep their promises, serve beyond their own interest, it's laughable. In Britain today, only a tiny sliver. Do it one more time. Only a tiny sliver of the public says they trust politicians to tell the truth. A 2023 survey found that just 27% of people say that they trust the UK government. Parliament and political parties fare worse, 24% and 12% respectively. Between 2014 and 2024, the British election study observed that the proportion of people with low or no trust in MPs rose from 54 to 76%. So when a politician pledges reform or when a party claims transformative vision, many don't believe it, because more often than not, the pattern is just the same: promise, spin, betrayal, backtrack. Many have lost their faith in the medical profession as well, a fact that became evident at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead of heeding the advice of medical professionals, many people decided that vaccinations were not for them. Even today, some choose to follow the medical advice of a US president who once proposed injecting disinfectant or light to combat the disease. Media is no refuge. The same lens that scrutinises power ends up creating suspicion. Which stories are emphasised, which are omitted, which are framed in such a way that the truth becomes whatever fits the narrative. We scroll feed after feed, headline after headline, wondering which version is real. Social media amplifies this fracture, the curated outrage, the selective editing, the echo chambers. People see the world now through algorithms that push what engages, often at the cost of accuracy. In this environment, trust becomes a scarce commodity. You become cynical by necessity. You assume someone is hiding something, spinning something, obscuring the truth. You look for the fault lines. And when your instinct is distrust, you stop expecting the system to deliver. Now, that's society at large. But what happens when that rot descends into the business of demolition and construction? In our industry, the foundations aren't just bricks and steel. They're contracts, reputations, promises of payment, obligations honoured. And all of those foundations are cracking. You've already seen it. Workers owed money, delayed, abandoned, promises made, then broken. And when people have nothing left, to lose, actions become distractive. And when people have nothing left to lose, actions become destructive. There's no romanticism in this. This is desperation. I don't need to recount each incident, but I'm sure you've all seen it. The demolition of a hotel entrance by a man denied his pay. Destruction of newly built houses by a worker who felt cheated. You know these stories. They linger in phone videos, in whispers on site, and in insurance claims. Acts of damage born of betrayal. Then consider how the supposedly respectable firms behave behind the scenes. In March 2023, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority found 10 demolition firms had illegally colluded to rig bids. The investigation spanned private and public sector contracts, Selfridges, Oxford University, magistrates' courts. Several directors were disqualified, and the CMA imposed nearly £60 million in fines. And all of those firms were members of the National Federation of Demolition Contractors, the very trade association that claims to uphold standards. Yet when the scandal broke, there was no moral reckoning, no sanctions, no bans, no leader rising to say, "Not in my name." Some firms sought to appeal fines, but the damage is deeper than money. The message is that collusion, deception, broken promises, even among leading firms, is possible, tolerated, perhaps seen even as just business as usual. And this is now being replicated in the house building sector. Several of the biggest names are under CMA investigation as we speak. As part of their proposed resolution, they've offered to commit around £100 million to affordable housing programs without admitting liability. And that's not contrition, that's calculation. What does all of that mean for those on the ground? It means that every contract you sign, every price you quote, every promise of payment carries a shadow. Do you trust that your bid isn't being undercut by a cartel partner of the contractor? If there is collusion behind the scenes, do you trust the client to pay you? A demolition contractor once said to me, "Demolition is the only industry in which you have no idea how much you'll be paid, when you will be paid, or even if you will be paid." How can anyone operate an honest business against that background. And this is not just about legal violation. It's about betrayal of the invisible compact of professionalism. When trade associations fail to act, when big firms collude behind closed doors, when subcontractors' workers are hurt by non-payment, when media and politics drip poison into public perception, these are all betrayals. Betrayal is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's small, a payment delayed because of cash flow, a margin shaved under the guise of market pressures, a hidden cost passed downstream, money withheld for no apparent reason. But a cumulative betrayal is just as destructive. Now, I won't pretend there's a bright horizon just over the skyline. What we have here is a constricting spiral. As trust falls, people act more defensively. And as they act more defensively, trust falls further. Already, many in our industry see the question not if a client or a firm will default on their word, but when. The assumption of default, that someone will try to rip you off, that bids are rigged, that payment will lag, that's become an operating assumption. In the public's eyes, the scandal is magnified. When construction firms collude, when supposed experts rig bids, when trade associations turn a blind eye, the industry becomes part of the broader narrative. Big business is corrupt. Promises count for nothing. And the individuals doing honest work, living by integrity, get painted by that brush of cynicism. Even on your site, even among colleagues, doubt creeps in. Is that figure real? Did that subcontractor cheat? Is this company hiding something? We see the collapse of faith in politics and the media and in institutions. We see collusion among contractors, non-payment of subcontractors and workers, the silence of trade bodies. We see an industry rotting from within. This isn't an industry issue, though. It's a societal symptom, a microcosm of a much larger failure. That truth no longer carries weight, that promises no longer mean anything, that a man's word, once his bond, is now worthless. What a sad indictment on modern life. Now, I will head over to the chat in just a second, but while I was writing that, there was a few bits and pieces that occurred to me. I've already mentioned one of them, how this loss of trust has impacted on me personally. Not so long ago, if somebody asked me to do some work for them, I'd do it. Well, I mean, wouldn't even bat an eyelid. These days, as long as I don't know them, I'll run a credit check. If I'm working for an equipment manufacturer, like I will be in Kentucky in week after next, I'll get half the money up front. Funnily enough, there are exceptions. If the company is Canadian, if they're Japanese, or if they're Scandinavian, I'm still happy to work on trust, because my experience tells me that all of those nations are reliable. I'm going to head over into the chat right now. Just one final point, and it's more a question. How many people do you know personally, those of you that are actually still watching this, how many people of you know somebody in this industry or outside whose word is still their bond, whose handshake still represents an unbreakable contract? You don't have to name them, but how many do you know? Do you know any? I know a couple. I do know a couple. I was speaking to one of them just yesterday morning, but how many do you know? Let's head over to the chat. Neil Bruce is heading on out the door. Laters, mate. Have a good day. I did send my address via PM as you asked. Thank you. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll go and take a look at that. Jim Turner says, can't trust the government. They only play with other people's money. And politics is just a popularity contest. I only trust MPs that stick to their guns even when everyone turns their backs on them. Do you know, I wonder if that popularity contest comparison still holds true. I think it's more evident in the States, although the way that the UK is going is very much following that line. There was a time when politics was, precisely as Jim described, a popularity contest. So you would amend your speech, your manifesto, your promises to try to win over as many people as you possibly could. Are there a few more votes to be had among young people? Let's say things that are hip and groovy. Are there a few more votes to be had among women? Let's talk about the importance of empowering women. Are there a few more votes to be had among ethnic minorities? Let's make sure that we appeal to them. That's how politics used to work. Now, as I say, I mean, specifically in the US, but it's very much coming here. That notion of trying to appeal to a broad church seems to have fallen by the wayside. It's almost a case of, I want my people. I I want them to be white, male, heterosexual, and deeply Christian. Those are my people. Everyone else can just fuck the hell off. As I say, I'm speaking specifically for the American side of things here, but that's not. I need to appeal to all 50 states and women, men, young people, ethnic minorities. That all seems to have gone by the board. It's more a case of, I just need to make sure that I nail down my demographic. So yes, Jim, I agree. It used to be a popularity contest. I wonder if that's the case. And I would also question the term as well. Just how popular are politicians? Or is it just a race to the bottom? Of the people that we've got to vote for, particularly here in the UK, you've got 5 or 6 main parties. We'll end up electing the least worst. Probably, possibly, maybe. But that notion of trust, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm getting old and cynical. Maybe that's a part of it. But as I say, it's kind of crept up, and I don't remember ever making a conscious decision about it. The way my business works, and I won't bore you with all the intricate details, but somebody might see one of my videos or one of my articles and say, oh, he looks like the fella to do this thing for us. So phone me up. Can you do so-and-so? I can. How much will it cost? It'll cost you that much. Fair enough. Yep, we've agreed that. Okay, we'd like you to go ahead. Literally up until about 2 or 3 years ago, I'd have just gone, yeah, absolutely, not a problem at all. Make sure you give me your invoice details, but I'll crack on and do that. And you can pay me when you're ready. You pay me, if I'm producing a video, you pay me when you're happy with the video. It might go back and forth 2 or 3 times, making amends and that kind of thing. But overall, there is a trust. And at the end of it, there would be a further trust. Here's my invoice. My terms are 30 days. I'd like to think that you will honour that 30 days. So that's how I worked. And bearing in mind with videos, it might take, I might do it today. I might not end up invoicing it until November. So I don't get paid till December. But there was always that trust between me and the company that I was working for, or the individual that I was working for. I don't have that now. As I say, I don't remember ever flicking a switch and thinking, I don't trust any longer. But I don't. And it's not just companies and organizations. That when I had my parting of the ways with the NFDC, there were people within the NFDC that I considered to be friends who stood idly by while I was basically tucked up. In actual fact, one of them took an active role in stitching me up. It breaks your trust. So at we're now at the point, and particularly post CMA, there are great swathes of the industry. I hate to say it, but I was at the IDE event the other day, and by and large, I tended to mix with the Institute of Demolition Engineers people, the Institute of Demolition Engineers members. There was a few others that I just basically gave a wide berth because the trust has gone. And this is an industry. I mean, I did actually put it in the article. I can't remember exactly where. When you think about how this industry operates, the words I used here, foundations aren't just bricks and steel. They're contracts, reputations, promises of payment, and obligations that they will be honoured. Contracts. We want you to do that. We will pay you that. Agreed? Agreed. Yeah, but we didn't like the way you did that, and maybe that could have, and then we're going to hang on to some of the money just in case with retentions, and we've got entire departments within construction companies now and demolition companies whose primary role is to not pay people. They will sit on the money as long as they feasibly and legally can. And I'm going to welcome Andy Thornton. He was here, he went away, he's back. Morning, Andy. We're talking about the subject of trust and so on. Here's another one. I realise this is utterly unconnected with all things to do with demolition and construction. As you all know, I'm a football fan, and a company, a team, my team, West Ham, will go out and they'll buy a player, and they'll agree a fee of 50 million quid. They'll agree his wages, 250 grand a week, whatever it is, and we will give him a 5-year contract. But after a year, he, like most people at West Ham, have grown awfully tired of losing every week, and he's decided, "Ah, fuck this, I'm off." Now he has a contract that says he's going to be with us for 5 years, but he's decided, I'm gonna bun that off. I'm out of here. That's okay. That's okay. Mark Fitz has just put football, West Ham, and then 2 smiley faces. The two do belong together, Mark, just so you know. Not always, but they kind of do. Yeah. How many times, as I say, going back to my early days writing about construction and demolition and equipment and that kind of thing, a man's word was his bond. That a handshake was good enough. It really was. Is it now? Would you accept that now? I wouldn't. And I do wonder whether that comes from the top, i.e. politicians that we can't trust, and then it gradually percolates down through society and down through industry, or whether just as a society we've seen so many examples now of people that can't be trusted and should never be trusted, that we've just gone, do you know what? It's every man for himself at this point. I'll look out for number one. Never mind my reputation and my honor and that kind of thing. Mark Fitz just said, "Dog eat dog." Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not harking back to some Enid Blyton take on the demolition and construction industry. It's always been a cutthroat business, but there was always that sense of honor among thieves. And I'm not saying that demolition and construction companies are thieves, but there was, they particularly in demolition, I think there's always been kind of walked a tightrope of legal and illegal, and they kind of hovered between the two. That bit rough around the edges, a few diamonds in the rough and that kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about. But they may be roughy tufty, they may be, walking the fine line between legal and illegal, but their word was their bond. Their handshake was as reliable as a written contract overseen by a solicitor. Now, and Mark Fisher just said, I said, honor among thieves. He's just said, thick as thieves. Andy Darvell says, my old boss, his word and handshake was his bond. He was an owner of a massive company, but if you worked hard for him and turned up every day, he had your back and looked after you. Not many like that. No, there's not. There's not. And listen, I know Dan and Jim were talking about this kind of thing earlier, with the profit margins of some of the major construction companies that we were talking about. It's not necessarily just a financial thing. If you've got a boss that you work hard for him, and he says thank you every once in a while, maybe bungs you a few quid at Christmas, gives you a bit of time off when you need it, and that kind of thing. That's all part of the. Now that doesn't seem to count for anything. I do think increasingly that employees are seen pretty much as a number. It's something I've had to instill in certainly 2 of my children. 2 of them have joined companies with an almost cult-like fervor, and they seem to believe that I've worked hard and the company will have my back and everything else. Will they? Or if you If you left or if something happened and you weren't there anymore, they'd replace you in about half an hour flat. Mark Fitz, can't do enough for a good governor. Let me know when you find one. Yeah. Yeah. How many are there? You know, as I say, I mean, there are some out there. You know, there are some straight guys out there. Adrian McLean at Armac, Richard Dolman at AR Demolition, people like that. You know, they'll look you in the eye, they'll shake your hand, and that's good enough. But I've just named 2 out of about 500. There are others, I'm sure, but, you know, those 2 spring immediately to mind. And the very fact that they stand out because of their honesty and trustworthiness and transparency, does that not tell you something? You stand out for being honest? When did that become a thing? Andy Thornton says, the whole premise of a contract is to hold people to their word. Either the contract is poorly written, and as you say, it's a world of money and litigation because you can't trust a handshake anymore. Do you not think that's a really sort of damning indictment? You know, I as I say, I'm not harkening back to the halcyon days of the 1950s. I wasn't there, you know, when you know we all went scrumping for apples, and if you leave your front door open and you could trust everyone. I'm not doing that. But there is a bit of me, you know. I'm bearing in mind, you know, I've been doing this for 35 years, and this is, for me at least, this has been a fairly recent thing. The fact that you become very, very painfully aware of the fact that you can't trust people. But just talking about demolition and construction here, what does that actually do to the cost of a project? Let's say you've got a demolition project and you've done your maths, you know how many people it's going to be required, how much equipment, how much fuel, how long it will take, blah de blah de blah. You've really done the calculations. You've done your spreadsheets. You've looked at it from every angle. You're not in any part of any cartel, and so on down the line. As I say, you've really analysed it, and you've decided that that job is going to be worth 500,000 quid. There's a margin of 2 or 3%, you know, because you've got to make a profit. You know, you need to make it worth your while. So it's going to be 500 grand. Are you looking at that and thinking 500 grand, send the bid off? Or are you thinking, yeah, I've worked with these buggers before and they really do drag their heels on paying? Best call it 550. Best call it 600. And if that happens all the way through the supply chain, when you think about, you know, a major contract run by a tier 1, demolition, well, asbestos crew go in first, demolition crew go in second, or soft strip, then demolition. They take it down to slab, and then the steel erectors, the piling contractors, and all of the others. If all of those are saying, yeah, I've worked for this tier 1 before and they are fuckers to pay, I'll add 10%, I'll add 15%, I'll add 20% just to cover myself, knowing full well that they're going to drag me through the ringer just to get my money. So think about that from a public procurement process. Never mind private finance, but public. This is coming out of the public purse. If you've got 10, 15, 20 layers of subcontractors there, all of whom are putting in a little bit more to make allowance for the fact that the tier 1 at the top can't be trusted, how much has that just escalated the price? How much more is the taxpayer paying because of a lack of trust? Andy Darvell, you can go off people, Andy. He says, you weren't there in the 50s? I'm surprised. Well, you can fuck right off. Cheeky bugger. I was born in 65. God dear. I haven't sent your prize off yet. I'm thinking twice about it now. I spoke to a daughter of an owner of a smaller sized earthworks and tipper firm I used to work for. She said they are pretty much running at a loss just to keep going. Definitely hard at the moment. Yeah, it is hard. don't get me wrong. I have personally, and as a business, I've been through hard times. That's the nature of doing business. You have your ups, you have your downs. I've had some downs, and there were times where I got behind on payment. But the one thing I did do is I kept answering the phone. I kept phoning people up and saying, I promised this money. As soon as the money arrives, you'll have it. I kept it all going. And even when we've ultimately, I mean, me and my former business partner, we folded a company. We didn't know anyone a red cent. We paid off everything, and we paid it off in about 3 months, not 7 years like Carillion. We paid it off in about 3 months. So to the point where there are still people that I will call upon, printers and people like that, freelancers. I will call upon them, and even though I kept them waiting for their money, they'll still work for me because that trust was never broken. Andy Thornton says it's a downward spiral. The non-payers know they're getting inflated quotes, and that's no doubt why they pay later and later. And for them, it's about keeping the stakeholders sweet. Yeah. How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is that? The non-payers, let's say the tier ones, know they pay badly, so they know that their subcontractors are inflating their bids to cover for that. So rather than trying to mend their ways, what they actually do is pay later. That it's a not just a race to the bottom; it's a drag race to the bottom. How mental is that? It blows my mind. And did anyone watch this whole thing about the American advice to stop taking for pregnant women to stop taking Tylenol, paracetamol, basically? And you all know my feelings on Mr. Trump and everything else, but he stood, bearing in mind the power that he wields, the influence that he wields, he stood there and basically said, I don't know this to be true, but my feeling is Tylenol's bad for babies, so don't take it. Now, if your Dr. Fauci had stood up, I can't remember the name of our equivalent here in the UK, Chris somebody or other, if somebody had stood up, a medical professional, 30, 40, 50 years of experience under the belt and said, actually, we've discovered this Tylenol, sketchy, don't take it. You'd go, oh, okay, that's fine. But this is a US president who has a feeling, no evidence, has a feeling that Tylenol is bad for pregnant women and advises the population to stop taking it. And as I say, I mentioned it in the article and in the monologue. You go back, there's that famous press conference where he stood at a podium and he said, COVID, it's running rampant. We're looking at things like, apparently it can't survive under light. Could we put light inside people? And he's talking to a doctor off screen. Could we put light in people? I don't know how you're going to put light in people. I don't know, a torch up their rear end or something. Could we put light inside people? And another thing we're looking at is disinfectant. Disinfectant kills it. Is there any way we could inject people with disinfectant? And bearing in mind, and I love most American people with an absolute passion, but full well that Jim Bob and Peggy Sue are sat there watching Donald Trump on the TV thinking, oh, sod that injection for a game of soldiers. Peggy Sue, pass me the bleach. I'm going to sort out this COVID on my own. Wallop. Yeah. And here's another point. Those that paid late, they've got the biggest bollocks and the best lawyers. How much money as an industry do we waste on litigation? And what's the other one? The word's gone completely out of my head. It'll come to me. Usually between a union and management. Arbitration. I had a brain fart. How much money do we waste on litigation and arbitration? How much money could we save if we were to take a bit of a step back and say the contract is honoured? You will do this, we will pay you that. Agreed? Agreed. We've done that. We'd like to be paid. There you go. There's your check. Would that not be better? Andy Darvell says, I saw someone the other day called Donald a giant What's-it. That's kind of a compliment compared to some of the things that I'd say about him. But I'm not going to go down that line because it annoys me to a huge degree. But from politicians, the media. Yeah, bearing in mind this is my baby. This is my wheelhouse. I am in the media. I've reported today's news, for example, the top 100 construction companies. Now, the evidence is there. You know, I could have come on here and said that Mark Anthony Demolition is the biggest construction company in the UK. We've got a turnover of £55 billion. For one thing, that company doesn't exist. For another, I know full well that you would see through that. The evidence is there. It's in black and white. Balfour Beatty is the biggest by a country mile. But when you look at the way that things are reported, regardless of whether it's a newspaper, a radio station, or a TV show, or a TV channel, you are now having to think twice. You know, my wife is a bit of a one for Facebook headlines. Oh, it says here that so-and-so's happened. Has it? I mean, I've lost count of the number of times that Eddie Murphy has died. And we're up to about 15 now. No, he hasn't. Well, it says here, but that doesn't mean anything. But you're even looking now at newspapers and at media. You know, you think back, you go back maybe 15, 20 years. The BBC was respected around the world. If the BBC said this is the case, the rest of the world, the entire world would go, the BBC is saying it, it must mean something. You know, they are the arbiters. They are 100% reliable. You know, never mind these Johnny come latelys at Sky, CNN, MSNBC, CNN, and all those. But if the BBC says yes, then the answer is yes. No question about it. I look at the BBC now and think, there's an agenda there, isn't there? You know, I'm not going to get dragged into the geopolitics of the thing, but when you think of how they are covering what's going on in Gaza, you have to think there is 100% an agenda there. You know, that they refuse to say the word genocide, and they would still like you to believe that the Palestinians kicked all this off, back in October last year, when in actual fact this has been going on for 50 plus years. I've got a new friend on Facebook who's a Nigerian prince who would disagree with you. For Christ's sake, don't copy my wife in on that. She'd be half married to a Nigerian prince if he was offering to send her £1 million. She absolutely would. To be honest, if he was really sending her £1 million, I might encourage it, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, people, there you are. That's the trust recession, which I believe we are living through right now. And I do think it's made worse by the spectre of a genuine recession, you know, the financial recession. I think when you get to the point where times is hard and we're not all making as much money as we would like, and people do start to sit on their money, any trust that there was there has been further eroded and makes people even more aggressive, dog eat dog, as Mark Fitz said. Gary Muirhead says, good morning, sorry I'm late, what did I miss? Gary, you know precisely what you missed. There were dancing girls, obviously. You know, we have them in the cupboard over here, and whenever you're not here we bring out the dancing girls. The money that we gave away, I mean, Dan Cullen need never work again. The money we gave Dan, it was dancing girls and free money all the time you weren't here. Unfortunately, just before you arrived, we ran out. What can I tell you? I can only apologise. Andy Dalvale says, toodaloo, peoples. See you tomorrow. You will indeed. I'm going to be back tomorrow. We're going to be talking about bullying and abuse on site. Have you ever suffered from it? Have you ever suffered from it? Have you ever done it? If you're thinking about it, fucking don't. I'll come round. I will hunt you down. But yes, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about abuse and bullying and that kind of thing. Dan Cole says, I'll second that. Thanks, Mark. Andy says, don't worry, Gary. I missed the giveaway too. It's the way it goes. The way it goes. Gary Muirhead says, story of my life. I sit here sometimes, and the dancing girls are, semi-naked. They're chomping at the bit, and I look up and down the chat, and I think Gary's not here, Andy's not here. Quick, girls, do your thing. And out they come. They give it their thing. I give away a bunch of money, and then just as the latecomers arrive, I push them back into the cupboard, never to be seen again. Yeah, and you also missed Demi. Demi was naked today. I don't know what made her do it, but Demi Lition was naked today, as the day she was born. There she was, flaunting. Can I tell you a story? All of that is bollocks. Don't take any notice of that, but I want to tell you a story. I caught a clip yesterday of a guy cycling around London. You know these blue plaques that we have on buildings in the UK? Blue plaque to denote, I don't know, John Lennon slept here, Edgar Allan Poe lived here. You're familiar with the notion of the blue plaque. Guy was cycling around London and he found a plaque to a lady called, I'm going to just bear with me. I'm fairly sure I've got her name right, but I want to be absolutely right on this. Her name was Prissy Fotheringham. Okay. I'm assuming that was short for Priscilla. Okay. Prissy Fotheringham. And her blue plaque proclaims that she was the second best whore in London. I don't know who the first best was. I'm sure she was very good at her job, but Prissy Fotheringham was supposedly second best whore in London. Okay. Bit before my time. This is back in the 1800s. So, however, the guy that was doing the Instagram video said, I can't actually tell you, aside from the fact that she was the second best prostitute in London, I can't actually tell you what she was famous for. You need to look it up. I looked it up. Prissy Fotheringham was famous for an act called chucking. Chucking, as in throwing, chucking. Apparently, this dates back to the Roman Empire, the practice of chucking. And our lady Prissy would strip naked, would stand on her head, would open her legs, and her punters would throw coins into her nether regions, shall we call it. And apparently she had the capacity for 40 half crowns. Yeah. Chucking. Now, listen, I'm sure everybody that attended Plant Works this week has had a fine old time, but would it not be improved by Prissy doing a spot of chucking at the entrance? No entrance fee, but, just feed the slot machine. Prissy, who's upturned and naked. That's a thing. That's a thing. Andy Thornton said it was the 1600s, actually. I can only apologise. I meant to have the information in the chat, but I didn't. Diane Cullen says, "Well, we have Bonnie Blue today." We do. Does she do chucking? Does she? Is she a lightweight? Did they have a top 100 list of best hauls too? Can't wait to see their profit margins. Better than construction, I would imagine. For being fed with half crowns, apparently. That's a vending machine. Yeah. This is where Chuck our la comes from. Is it? Listen, you all know. I spent 4 years writing for a porn magazine. I know my way around. I'm not naive. I know things go on. Haven't taken part in many of them, but I know these things go on. Chucking yesterday afternoon, completely new to me. Never heard that before at all. Never heard that before. And was, when she turned back up the other way, did she sort of jump up and down until it all fell out? Did she sound like, when you got a lot of change in your pocket, did she sound like that? Would you necessarily want the 40 half crowns that had been in there? Yeah, it's all, listen, this show is an education. None of it useful, I grant you, but it's an education. So yes, Prissy Fotheringham chucking. There was no change. Absolutely top notch. There you are, people. That'll do me for today. I don't know. As I say, I'm going to be talking about bullying and abuse tomorrow. If you have been bullied or abused at any point, particularly on site, I'd love to hear about it. Do so anonymously if you wish. You don't need to actually do it on the show. You can do it privately. You know where to find me, over on WhatsApp or anywhere else, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. If you happen to see a woman upturned naked, don't throw money at her. That might not be a party piece. She may have just landed like that. Behave yourselves. I'll see you tomorrow. All the best.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.